Welcome to the Uplift, where we are uplifting our lives, uplifting each other, and uplifting our communities together. Thank you for joining myself, Cy Herrera, and Tessa Cy here, two women, two attorneys, doing it our way, and inviting you here each week to share in on the stories, advice, and life lessons we've picked up along our journeys that keep us uplifted, and that will hopefully do the very same thing for you. Now buckle in and let's get ready to be uplifted.
Hello, everyone. So glad you're here with us today on what I think is going to be a really fun and funny conversation. As always, I'm Tessa, and I'm joined by the lovely Cy.
Hello, hello. Good morning, Tessa.
Good morning. Well, we spent part of our morning listening to a remake of the song 9 to 5, which I think is probably has both of us really inspired. While it's, we can go on and on about probably the problems with the 1980s movies when it comes to 2023, 2022. But, you know, that Dolly Parton can write a song, assuming she wrote it. I'm not really sure, but
I think
and
she
it,
did.
yeah, when I remember listening to it as a kid and thinking, I don't really know what this is about, and maybe it was because I was too young to pay any attention to it, but the remake really made you understand how hard it is to work your way up and achieve your goals, and how do you do it without getting kicked down, which is really obviously what 9 to 5 I think was about. If I remember correctly, I should probably rewatch it just to be safe. But anyway, it's kind of that same idea. How do you keep going? How do you keep uplifting yourself? But how do you do it when it comes to your purpose, like your purpose of being? And we, the society talks a lot about a purpose-driven life, and I feel as though we're so good in the United States about just focusing on one thing, and it has to be that one thing, and we have to achieve everything about it. And you and I had a fascinating conversation yesterday about whether or not when you're focused on your purpose, do you get so focused on it that you lose sight of everything, and it becomes like toxic almost, or it becomes more about you. And it's a fascinating topic because it's one I hadn't really thought about, but it's also like so true. Like, I think about, I don't know, I guess from an Austin perspective, we have Whole Foods Market, and its former founder, and it's since been sold to Amazon, but he had a very much, focus driven
Yeah.
purpose when it came to that store. And even though after that sale has been completed, and I assume he has no like leadership role from what I can tell, his purpose is still, he makes it known what his purpose was for that store when they make a move that he doesn't like. And we see it in the Austin press. And maybe that's the start of it. Maybe it's, how do you see toxic forms of purpose? Like, we've talked before about toxic positivity, but I had never thought about toxic forms of purpose.
Yeah. I think of it as, it's like anything else. Like it's a fine line, right? And there's a point in time where I think you just cross that line. And so there's nothing wrong with searching for meaning and seeking purpose in your life. I think that's all great. I think the hard thing is when people start to make their work their identity. And you start to think, and I think, just especially when you just get a little bit older and older, like you just start thinking like, how are people gonna remember me? Or what am I gonna be known for? Or
My
like,
legacy.
what is my legacy, right? And it's just an interesting thing. I think my take, I've thought about it a lot, and I feel like, my whole work is mission driven, it's mission centered. And yeah, I love that. It makes me feel good. I feel like it's rewarding as I'm doing it. And I guess the thing I love is that I can have those feelings, but not necessarily like I'm already thinking about like the, not end game, but just like my full life experience. And I feel like especially with COVID, I hope that this has given people a chance, and I think it has, given a lot of people a chance to just be more reflective about, like, what are we doing with our lives? You know, 9 to 5 is so relevant. It's amazing that this just comports right now because it's so relevant because when I hear that song, I hear about my 20s, and I
Mhm.
was working a lot more than 9 to 5, honey, but let me tell you,
Weren't we all? Yes.
but, 9 to 5 captured that essence of, what am I even doing? Like, what am I even working for? For me. For me, it's about, like, you're working and working like a dog, and you don't get any recognition for it. Somebody else takes all the credit. It just feels bad. It just feels terrible. Like,
Right?
you're just putting in this work, you're putting in this work, you're sacrificing, all kinds of stuff. And when I think about that, I think, like, you're sacrificing, other things that can be meaningful in your life. And that's where I think the key is. You know, yes, you can find meaning in your work, and it's wonderful, and I encourage people to do it if they can and they have the opportunity. But, there is that line that could be crossed where you start sacrificing everything, and this could be anything. This doesn't have to be work. This could be you're
Right.
sacrificing your life for another person in your
True.
life because you think that, "You know what? Everyone's gonna see me," like and it's not conscious. That's the other thing I will say, like, I don't think it's conscious. I just think that in society, you either really buy into the idea that, like, money is king and that you need to be making as much money as possible and that makes you, like, good, successful, or maybe
Oh,
you
that's
buy
so
into this.
scary.
I know, right? And then the other one that I think is a trap too is you wanna be a good person. You don't wanna be a greedy capitalist. You wanna really be a good person, and you wanna prove that you're a good person, and that might have to look like you sacrifice your life like Mother Teresa or something like that. Like, you are just, like, serving the poor, you're serving somebody that's ill, you're serving, all your children, at to the detriment of your own fulfillment, reward, satisfaction, joy, just things that I think every person deserves. And that's the thing that sticks out for me is that it's not about what you do. It's not about how much time you spend in any given thing. It's about, are you also making space and time for yourself as a human being to enjoy this lived experience? Like, are you enjoying life? And that for me, that's important. And I hope that it's, like, more important for people, after getting this time to reflect on things, like we talked in the last episode, just simple things like food. Like, why are we sacrificing food for what? To why? You know what I mean? Like, it becomes pathological almost, right? And so that's what worries me is that so many people are being conditioned and socialized and pushed and cued and hinted to that they should do this or that for the rest of society, I guess, and for other people. And I think that this is the same thing. I think that or I observe really, that we can fall into the trap of trying to prove just how good of a person we are to the detriment of our own joy and our own self wellness, really, to the detriment of our own wellness, and that's the part that worries me there.
So we're really just sacrificing ourselves a bit.
Mhm.
And then how do we continue to fulfill a purpose if we've
Mm.
depleted ourselves essentially,
Mhm.
right? Like you
Mhm.
become completely drained.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I
Yeah, it
guess
can, yeah.
if I'm thinking about it from that, what was that documentary about that guy who only ate McDonald's for like however many
Super Size
like
Me. I love
right,
those
like
documentaries,
if,
yeah.
if your purpose is in his case only to eat McDonald's, I mean, you're sacrificing things like salads and fresh vegetables and
Mm.
fruit.
Sanity, no.
Sanity,
He
yeah,
sacrificed so much. I mean, his health. He showed in
yeah,
that documentary that he was literally sacrificing his health and possibly having long-term effects on his body, right? And all of that. And
yeah,
he I think he went in knowing what he was sacrificing in a lot of ways, so that was at least informed. The thing that worries me most is I just see that some people are, or many people, I should say, are really falling into this without knowing it, without really realizing it, and then looking up one day and realizing, "I'm not happy. I'm not doing anything for myself. I am only giving and giving and giving, and life is gonna pass you by," and that's tragic.
I think it is also like it dovetails into the toxic workplace environment that
Mm.
definitely existed before the pandemic. I hope has kind of fixed itself, but I still know those people who will function on 3 hours of sleep because they feel that they will be a more productive person and fulfill their purpose if they wake up at 5 a.m.
Mm. Or because of the pressure, right? Yeah, like, I
Yeah.
mean, I hope you're right. I hope that the toxic workplace is changing. I don't know for sure. I really hope that's true, um, but I don't know because here's another thing, like, I from friends and things, just people that I've spoken to, anecdotal stuff, I've heard, you know what? Things are getting a little more flexible, now we don't, punch the clock kind of thing. Speaking of 9 to 5, we are, doing our hours still, but, it's whenever we can do them, whatever makes sense, but we still have to have maybe 40 hours, for example. Um, and I mean, I'm not gonna argue the the way workplaces should be set up across the board because, of course, it's probably different for everybody. But at the same time, I do wonder. I think that's great that there's some flexibility that I'm hearing about. Um, but also, like, we've seen kind of like a backlash, if you remember, after the lockdown. Um, there was a whole thing where it was like national news. Employers were like, "Hey, get back to work in the office." And we all
Mhm.
know that, of course, there's been more spikes. There's been, all kinds of ups and downs with COVID. And, this came pretty early on, I feel like, where and the thing that interests me is not that that happened or that it happened once or that it was national news. Like, that's not the interesting part. The interesting part to me is it felt like it was happening with an urgency because there was a sense that, uh-oh, things are gonna kind of teeter one way or another. We might go into this whole other space of kind of not necessarily a revolution, just, a new renaissance of like things have to be different from here on out. And you could just feel people pulling back, like, no, 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 no. Let's go. Let's get over here. Let's not go over that edge, right? And so I think
Right.
that's so interesting to just see that fear. If for me, that's what's
Mhm.
interesting. Like, 9 to 5 was made at a time when it was, man, I mean, I wasn't there, but from what I know, it seems like a time when things were very rigid, right? I mean, even the 9 to 5 thing is like, here are your hours. Everybody
Right.
works 9 to 5. And you're in the office, you're on time, things are rigid, there was no flexibility as far as I could tell. And that was the status quo for decades.
Oh,
That's the
yeah.
way things were, I mean, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. I mean, COVID has really been it really has been a revelation. It has been something that has shook things up in a way that nothing else probably could have. And it's just interesting to see, kind of the panic set
Right.
in at different points.
You make a good point. I hadn't really thought about this the way you framed it, but it is as though those employers who wanted to rush back, their
Mhm.
purpose, they thought, was to have this, not even 9 to 5, it was probably like 8 to 8.
Mhm.
Well, probably
Mhm.
24 hours because they wanted to be accessing their employees 24 hours a day.
And
I mean, we
technology was
had
allowing that, honestly. Like, that's
yeah,
actually,
right?
yeah, we could talk about that.
And they thought that that was the purpose of employers was to, hammer out all this work in a very specific looking
Mm.
office setting. And
Mhm.
then so they have like got all into that purpose, and then we see the backlash, right? It's like they sacrifice so much that they destroy themselves. I like to
Mm.
think, or at least partially, because we had the great resignation after that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so there's always going to be this kind of right setting, I think, when you go so far into your purpose that it becomes toxic, in this case, toxic to your employees. They're like, perhaps not. Let's try a
Mhm.
different route because your
Yeah.
purpose is is so narrow and it was so limited that the idea of flexibility didn't really enter the minds of these employers. They knew what they had before, and they weren't willing to step into what was evolving and had been evolving before the pandemic, but was pretty limited. I mean,
Right. Yeah.
flexibility was it existed, but it was kind of like this enigma that, oh, you have a flexible job. Well, aren't you a little unicorn?
Yes, and it was very interesting to me because it was obviously possible and it was
Mm.
very, like, attainable. It's, like, right there, and, for the folks in my generation, I guess, we were just like, "Hello, like, why not?" And people just above us were just like, "Nope," and I remember that time. I mean, this is not that long ago. It's just
I
so
know.
interesting how much things have changed and people have just and in some cases made a complete about face. And I think so that just interests me because we talking about, toxic purpose or, chasing legacy in a way, there was a time when, and I'm sure it still persists, the whole oh God, I'm trying not to get into just straight gender norms at this point, but I mean, like through I'm just thinking like 50s onward, the whole idea of like the provider and that was your
Yes.
purpose, like being the head of the family, whether you're
Mhm.
male or female now or any gender, I can imagine that that is something that still persists and can really be, that driving factor of, maybe you don't say it out loud, maybe you don't think it out loud, maybe you don't talk about it with friends, but if your power is taken away to be a provider and you were a provider or you think you're supposed to be a provider, um, that that can mess you up. And I think it actually speaks loudly to the fact that we are so entrenched, our identities specifically are so entrenched sometimes with, work, with
Mhm.
purpose, with all of those different things. And I guess I'm coming from a place where I don't deny any of that and I don't deny that it, I'm sure has some impact on me as well. But I wonder, can we create a culture? Because what you were saying before about, and what I was saying too about people just, employers just changing their mind, that shows that that was about culture and about
Mhm.
mindset. It was not about ability or opportunity. That was not the issue. The issue was literally just the way that we think things should be. Those are
Right.
values. Those are actually values. Our values changed during COVID, and that's pretty amazing because values
It
are really hard to
is.
change. But that's what happened is like we have come from this, Protestant work ethic type of culture where, sacrifice is good. And
Yeah.
we have to grapple with that. Even if you're not religious, it doesn't matter. This country is based on that kind of thing, in my opinion. And it permeates the culture. When you walk into a workplace, if people believe that, then, you're going to be conditioned or at least encouraged also to think and behave that way. And so it's fascinating to me that values are starting to shift, and I think that's why so many people are scared and sometimes panicky, right? Because that it does change. When once values change, behavior follows, right? And so when you have your identity mixed in with being a worker or a caretaker or a mother or like when that is your whole identity, that's when it gets, in my opinion, a little bit worrisome because of course it's part of your identity, but how big of a part? Is it your whole identity? Or do you have other things just for you? Other things that really, really feed your soul. And that's kind of what I would just, I guess, encourage to kind of counter that like toxic purpose that we're talking about today.
Yeah, I think obviously the pandemic helped with the toxic workplace kind of purpose, being that people thought you had to be in the office. Like the purpose of work was to be
Mhm.
in the office, which we all know now is false.
Right.
But how do we as individuals find it? I'm wondering. I know recently I
Mm.
had to talk a friend off a ledge because she decided that her purpose was to help this one individual who needed help, mind you. Like, it wasn't that she
Mhm.
was just sacrificing herself for nothing, but it became
There's
so.
always somebody new who needs help, Tessa.
I
That's the
know,
thing.
right?
There's
And
always
she totally
a
sacrificed
need.
everything from her
Yeah.
business that she runs herself
Mm,
to
mm,
her life and her sleep, and I'm just like,
mm,
and I finally said, "Hey, who's looking out for you?"
I love that line of yours. Oh my gosh, we need to put that on something so that people remember that line, literally. Oh my gosh, who's looking
But
out for
thinking
you?
right? Like, who
Yeah.
is looking out for you? And I think if we're thinking about, like, kind of work purpose, and which I hear I'm saying I think again, which is a lot of US culture, right? It's like we always ask, "Oh, what do you do?" And I've tried to stop myself from asking, "What do you do?" when I meet somebody new, and I've started to ask, "What keeps you busy?" Right? To
Mm.
allow them to choose whether they wanna talk about a hobby or their work or their family or, their love of ladybugs. Who knows what it might be, right? But I think we've
I like that.
created these systems that we just kind of accepted where our
Yeah.
identity is our work or our identity is whatever purpose we've adopted that day or that life.
And it doesn't
Some
have
people
to
say,
be. Yeah.
right, it's like, who are you and who's looking out for you?
I
And do
like
we have
that.
enough people around us
Or what brings you
asking us?
joy? I love asking people,
Yeah,
"What brings you joy in your life?" And people, like, at first look at you kind of strange because nobody asks that, right?
you're
But then
right.
but then they're like get a smile on their face and they think about something that brings them joy, and I love it. It's so good.
It's like, how did we create a world and live in a world where that's the exception?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Our question is, what do you do for work that and it's like, what's interesting to me I know it's different. It really like, the world has changed a lot, but I feel like, especially
Yeah.
pre-pandemic, it was almost like, you know, everybody hated work.
Well, yeah, it
And
was toxic.
yeah, and it makes sense why they did, right? But it was also like, what's funny is that everybody hated work, and our whole, like, centering was on work, which is it's just so funny. It's like, so you're focusing on the thing that you hate the most in life all the time, and you're just, like, spreading it around, asking people to talk about it. It's almost, like, re-traumatizing. It's so funny that that's our culture. That was our culture. It's so interesting to me. And it's not the
It
same
doesn't
in other
make
countries. That's what really kills me. Like, I've heard about,
right?
like, in Italy, like, nobody would ask you, "What do you do for work?" People are like, "I work." Like, who cares?
I also don't think that so thinking about, like, how we were worker bees who were in this
Mhm.
toxic environment, it was almost as though we understood we were being abused by our
Mm. Mhm,
employers, but we
mhm.
chose to keep going back to our abuser. And
Well,
I don't
because what
think
was the
that's true in other
alternative,
places.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's the problem is there was what's the alternative at that time? I mean, people are making all kinds of careers. It's an amazing time. Like, people are making all these different careers online, they have no boss. They're just working for themselves. I mean, it's kind of like the new American dream if you think about it, where it's just like you're an entrepreneur, but you don't have to have a storefront. You don't have to have the upfront costs that you used to.
absolutely. And as somebody who has worked for themselves before the pandemic and after, I will
Mhm.
admit that I place that kind of
Mm,
toxic idea that I had to be in the office,
mhm.
even if I wasn't being super productive.
You're, like, proving it to somebody, yeah.
Yeah, right? Like, it was the idea that other people knew that I was there. And I realized it took me a while into the pandemic to
Yeah.
realize, wait, I can be even more productive
Mm.
in my home office or working from somewhere else.
Mhm. I love that.
And
I love that, yeah.
I mean, I was first to admit that I was drowning in that kind of mentality of must be present,
Mhm.
and must arrive earlier, must leave later, which I think
Mm.
came from law school, right? Like that idea
Mhm.
that first in, last out. This is how you made your way to partner, and it sticks with you, right? It does.
The
It's driven
toxic
into your
culture going into the school, that's so interesting, but true. It's so interesting.
like. I don't know if other
Probably, I
professional
mean,
degrees have it the same way, but
well,
they sure do it to you in law school.
oh, yeah, and you know that lawyers have the worst rates of all the bad things.
Of
Just
course they do. Why do people even like us?
They don't.
Oh, that's right, they don't.
They don't.
I
They
I
pay us
generally
because they
avoid
have
saying
to.
that I am a lawyer.
I know, I
You
that's the last thing that I say. I'm like, "Oh,
Yep.
yeah, I'm an attorney too," if it becomes relevant. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I
Mhm.
forgot about that part." Mhm.
Yeah.
No, they don't like us, and there's good reason. I mean, it's not because we're terrible people, it's because we are
Mhm.
in a terrible stew of toxic culture. That's the
Mhm.
thing, and it's the same thing with, the way that our work life was, too. And I know it's still bad for so many people now, so I don't minimize that
Yeah.
whatsoever. But I do emphasize the fact that there are little cracks
Yes.
happening, and those little cracks are just shining a little bit of light through to let us know, like, we could break this whole thing down.
Yeah.
Things
And then
could be different.
that makes me really happy. Like, I think of my
Mhm.
husband's field in the restaurant
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about a group that just hot kitchens, hot
Giving it,
attitudes.
serving it, oh my goodness, and so
Yeah.
much work, nobody even
Expensive
understands. Oh,
degrees. Mhm.
yes, debt and living off
Mhm.
of, like, just, whatever people throw at you. It's such
Yep.
a I was a server for 10 years, and so I know how hard it is, and it's so underappreciated. That's the other thing that kills me. Like, I'm not gonna go on a rant, but I will just say that, wow, some of the people, let's talk about essential workers, let's talk about, the people that are making things happen in the world. We, for a minute there, were with at least rhetoric saying, you are super valued, you are really, really valued. But at the same time, when we talk about the people whose lives have really changed through the pandemic in a positive way, those are probably the least of them. Those are probably the people who have seen the least change. If anything,
Yeah.
their work conditions have gotten more difficult and more dangerous and more hazardous, right? And so, yeah, like, what does a future restaurant look like? What does the future everything look like? And the interesting thing to me, the most promising thing to me, again, is that if values are changing, anything could change.
Absolutely. And I, like you, have this hope that we have taken steps. And I feel as though, like, if I'm on a scale of 1 to 100% change, I think we're 30 to 40. Like, I
Mhm.
think that's a substantial step forward that we made. And I'd like to see
Yeah.
it keep moving forward because sacrificing ourselves for our job or our our purpose, and when those two essentially our jobs and our purposes have become our identities. And I like to think I'm a lot more than my job or my purpose.
Mhm. And also, so, like, thinking about that example from Italy, that stuck with me. I learned about that years ago, and it stuck with me because I feel as if, we're often just measured. Our value is measured, and I that's where it comes from. Like, we're internalizing it, but, we're all kind of judging each other. Like, why do you ask somebody, "What do you do?" Like, I mean, think about it, like, the way that people would ask it, like, at a party, it's almost like they're measuring
Yeah,
you up. It's like, "What do you do?" "Well, I
yeah.
do this. What do you do?" And it's really gross and very
It
sad,
is.
and it's unfortunate because it shows that, this toxic culture has we've internalized it to measure our own self-worth by it, right? And when I heard that out of Italy, I was like, "Wow," like, that's like a whole new world to me, to imagine a world where I am not measured by my, quote unquote accomplishments or degrees or, workplace stature, what have you. Like, just to be a person and just to, like, have at the core value that every person is just worthy of living and enjoying their lives. You know what I mean? Like, that's, to me, that was a revelation for me. I was like, I can't imagine that. It was like a fantasy that honestly I'm still seeking. Like, one of my big goals is to go to Italy just to see, is this true? To two people. That's not really the only reason I want to go to Italy, but that's one of them. I'm fascinated by the idea that people could be kind of, what would be the word? Like, kind of like post workforce purpose, if that makes any sense. But, just to, like, see each other as human beings and be like, oh yeah, we do stuff because we need to, but that's not who I am. That has
you're
nothing to
raising
do
a
with who I
point that
am.
I guess
Yeah.
in the United States, we don't see individuals, we
Mm.
see what they do.
Mhm. Yeah.
And, I'm more interested in sitting down with somebody, having a nice long Italian meal and enjoying ourselves,
Yes.
not just like, how
Yes.
quickly can I shovel in this chemically kind
5
of
minutes
created
for
food?
lunch. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
get so mad when I hear about a 30-minute lunch. I don't know why. I think it's because it's just I've had a 30-minute lunch or less actually, and it's like the manner in which you have to rush to get food, try to locate food, pay for food, eat the food, clean up after yourself, maybe try to go to the bathroom if you're lucky and get back to work. Like, it's inhumane. I just
It is.
I just can't.
It's so
But it's
crazy.
also it's just so anti human relationship, I guess, and human connection, because for me, it's
Yeah.
like meals should be what you just described. Like, every meal should be like an Italian meal in my life, in my mind, in my heart, in my fantasy,
Agreed.
like, it should.
Right? And we can get to know each other and know that,
Yeah.
hey, this person I work with who might be the accountant in our company, and I
Mhm.
think his only purpose is being an accountant,
Make those numbers.
right? But maybe at home he likes to paint and he's figured out how to like recreate Monet's because that's his new
Mm.
gift. I mean, who
Yes.
knows?
Yes, I always loved when I would, like, run into law students or lawyers who were musicians because I was like, "Oh, you're human." Like, I just like I would just instantly be like, "Oh, you're cooler, like, you're a cool person. You like to do things that are not this." Like, I feel like anybody,
Hmm.
no offense, lawyers that just, like, that's all that they're into, I'm like, I'm very worried for you. Very concerned that this is what this is it. And that's
Yeah,
not that the law is not interesting. I mean, obviously, I think it's interesting. And it is a people thing.
it
But
is,
at
but
the
it's not
same
our life.
time, it cannot be your whole life. That's scary.
Actually, thinking about what you pointed out earlier about how sometimes this purpose doesn't have to be like toxic workplace purpose. It could be that
Mhm.
you want to dedicate your life to saving puppies, which
Mhm. Mhm.
totally noble. But when
Yeah,
you do
great.
that to the point where eh, you know, drained your bank accounts, drained
Mm.
your self of all your like strength because you aren't
Relationships, you're
sleeping.
sacrificing your home, your space. That reminds me of an actual episode on Queer Eye. I don't know if you've seen it, but there was an episode where a woman here in Austin created a
Yes.
nonprofit just to save
Mm-hmm.
the poor animals that were like, I can't remember like if they had like, any animal that basically was getting ready to be euthanized, or they just like couldn't walk, or they just had different bodily issues or what have you, and couldn't be adopted and things like that. And I mean, she had sacrificed, in my
Yes,
mind,
she
just
did.
everything. Like, she was just like, there's a pig sleeping in my house, there's 5 dogs here, there's like, she didn't have any bed space. Like, she would work every day from dusk to dawn, dawn to dusk, whichever way that goes. And her kids were in it, like, everybody in her circle would get sucked into it, and it was clear that, like, she just never, ever took a moment to even think about if anything else were to bring her joy, and this brought her joy. That's what's
Yeah.
scary about it. That's what's really, really that's why we say toxic, because you don't even know it, like, it can go so
Yeah.
far where you're like, "Oh, this feels good. This feels rewarding. This feels affirming. I'm doing a good thing. I'm a good person." And before you know it, you're a martyr, and that's it. And that's the trap, exactly the trap that we're talking about.
Yeah. And I want to say, I'm going to repeat myself, but we all need that group around us where someone, at least
Mm,
one of them, is going to
mhm.
say, hey, who's looking out for you? I mean, we all can't
Yes.
have the Queer Eye show up. Well, it would be
Yeah,
fantastic.
exactly.
And I would totally
Exactly.
welcome it.
Yes, please.
But
But maybe
let's be
that's
realistic.
a model. Maybe that's a model for us to follow, of, like, we need somebody to be like our Karamo, like,
Yeah.
everybody needs a personal Karamo.
Yes, they do.
Mhm.
And maybe, we've been trying to be so good about leaving our listeners with something to like try and practice and see if it'll
Mhm.
like help any bit. Is it this time to be somebody's karama, or is it something simple like, let's not ask what people do for a living, but let's ask what brings you
Oh, so
joy
many.
or what
Yeah,
keeps you
so many.
busy?
Or who's looking out for you, which is my favorite one
Yeah.
because who's looking out for you and, also what brings you joy because sometimes I've realized like people have no answer and it's shocking that they have never thought about it and I mean it's shocking to them. So like don't get me wrong, I got Tessa. Like Tessa totally asked me this question and I was shook and caught off guard and I was like, I don't know. Like did not think about that, right? But
Did it
everybody should.
help you?
Oh, 100% absolutely. Because then I realized that I deserve that.
We
Like
all
just
do,
just
yeah.
just by that question, I real like it just posing that question, that's why it's my favorite one, is so important because people that have this issue that we're talking about, they keep giving and keep giving and keep giving and keep going and keep doing because they think they have to, because they think they need to, because they think no one else can do it, because they can do it and they feel obligated to do it or they even feel good about doing it and they rarely look up and think, "Oh, what about me?" or "Who's got me?" or "Who's looking out for me?" or "Am I going too far?" Like, I mean, they don't think about that. They don't lift their head up. They put their head down and they work, right? And
Yeah.
there's so many of us, I'm going to say like that because I was absolutely been one of those people. And it's so much better on the other side, y'all. So I just want everybody to have that and have somebody. I want them to have their own Tesla or their own Chrome, I will say, because they don't know what they're missing because they've never even thought about thinking of themselves. So I'm going to challenge myself to always ask people who I know are struggling. You can tell when somebody's struggling. That's not the hard
Mhm.
part. The hard part is what do you do? How do you help them navigate that? And I think that first question could be, who's looking out for you? Especially for our caretakers out there who are giving and
Yeah.
giving and caring for other people. Who's caring for you, right? Like what time do you have for yourself? What are you doing to bring you joy in that time? What do you do to get your joy? What besides this maybe is what you say. But I think that that's such a good first question, who's looking out for you? Just to pose the question, just to get them thinking.
Right, and I think when you're asked that question, your mind just starts going because when you can't
Mhm.
answer it, you're like,
Oh god.
"What? What have I done? Have I created this bubble
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
I have not allowed myself to escape it, and
Yeah.
I've created this own little prison around me?" And it could be the
Mm.
perfect little
Mm.
person that's doing amazing work for the world
Yep.
and bringing so much joy and good to everybody else, but unless you, the creator of this person, don't have that joy and aren't finding time for you and someone looking out for you, you can't give your best self, I don't think.
No, and not forever. You might be able to for a while, and I think that's what
True.
a lot of these folks are doing, where it's like they look from the outside like they are amazing. Like, think about everybody on Queer Eye, basically. Like, you can think about
Yeah.
everybody on there, and on a resume or something, you're like, damn, this person is doing it. They got their own nonprofit. They're doing this thing. They're doing that. They're helping to give back to the community. Like, they just are amazing. All of that good stuff, and that's what keeps people on that little like high, like that's what keeps them reaching for that little bit of reward, right? um but the problem is that most of the time nobody's looking out for them. That's why I love that question.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking out for them. Nobody is trying to care for them. And even if somebody has like, a great spouse or partner or children or parents or whatever family circle you think might be doing that for them, it's not necessarily true. They might be the caretakers emotionally for all those people around them, or maybe
Yeah.
not. Or maybe they have, one person who drains them emotionally and there's nobody that they can pour their cup into. Like that, I mean, you just don't know. And that's why the question is so genius because it's just to make sure. And I almost think we should be asking everybody this question just to make sure. Because
Yeah.
sometimes the people that need it the most are the strongest looking ones on the outside.
Oh, 100%.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm. And
So I
I
think let's ask. Yeah.
yeah. I totally respect the people who figured it out before being asked that.
Mhm, exactly, yeah, then that's wonderful, and then you're just showing them that you care enough to know that they're
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, and it could change too, that's another thing, I mean, they might
absolutely.
be great, they might have somebody one day, and the next day, that person left them, or
Yeah,
whatever, or they had a fight, and their relationship is not the same anymore, So I think we've talked about checking in with one another, but this question for me anyways was really powerful. And so I think it's a good one to challenge today.
I do too. And it kind of gives me the warm and fuzzies, I have to say, knowing that not only that question can be so powerful and help people, but also knowing that, hey, I have people who are that person,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
that's a really good feeling that helps you
yep,
work toward an intentful way to help your purpose as opposed to, hey, I'm all in, I'm gonna throw everything at it. Instead, you learn like, hey, I'm gonna devote 4 highly productive hours today on my purpose.
yes,
But
yes,
I'm not gonna
yes.
throw 24 hours at it of like everything and leave everything totally depleted.
Yeah, and everybody needs somebody on their team. I know we've talked about that, but it's just a good reminder. Everybody needs somebody on their team and to feel like they're not alone. I feel like well, I know that the pandemic has left so many people feeling very, very lonely. I mean, that's just real, and I wonder and I worry for others, and I guess for myself too. I mean, it's really a challenge, but how hard was it to maybe recapture those relationships that were undoubtedly impacted by the pandemic, right? Like, how many of us just kind of like lost friends, lost contact, stayed more to ourselves? I mean, hopefully that didn't happen to you. Maybe you were able to maintain it through the whole pandemic, but I know that a lot of people struggled with that, and some of those relationships will not be salvaged, right? And some of them will. But I can just imagine that there's so many people now, honestly, that or it must be rather that don't have anybody, looking out for them, and possibly that was one of the factors why.
And also realizing perhaps that even if they've lost contact, maybe the friendships they have aren't of the quality they want, right? Like
Mm.
it could be a superficial friendship and
Mhm,
not a
mhm.
friend who is going to stop and ask, hey, who's looking out for you?
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe that's why it didn't survive the pandemic, who knows?
Yeah,
But regardless, I mean, we've lost people, literally, figuratively, through this, and even if you're a lucky one, that doesn't mean that some of the people around you we're as lucky. So I love this question. I'm gonna start using it, and it's really a challenge. That's what's great about this question is it's a challenge we're sending out to everyone, but also a challenge when you ask it. It's a challenge to the person to say, "Hey, of course you should have someone looking out for you. Who's that person? You need to have that person, right?" And so I think I'm going to do a little inventory to go
pass that
around and
on.
yeah, and go around and just make sure everybody that I care about, has that person, and that it's more persons than just me, honestly. Because,
Right?
that's the other thing is, like, you can't be that person for everybody in your life if you have a lot of people in your life like I do.
Yeah,
So, maybe making sure that they're taken care of some way or another.
absolutely. I think this is a great note to and wrap up on today because it's so powerful. Like, who knew a simple little question could raise so many, like, really good ways to uplift yourself. And when you're the person asking it, it also, I think, uplifts you because you know, like, hey, I have, I'm reaching out beyond my space and beyond who I am and recognizing, hey, I want to help this person and I want to help them become their best selves. But also, when I ask it, I'm also kind of doing a self inventory at the same time. So it's really
Mhm.
like a win win.
Yes, 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 100%. Well, thank you, Tessa, for asking that question to me. and for bringing it back today. It's like this is a classic one. I'm telling you, this is a t-shirt. But it's also a great challenge. So good luck, y'all. Please let us know how it goes, and we're excited to report back.
Yes, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Take care. Stay well.